So welcome everybody to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be working through the AQA Higher GCSE Maths paper of November 2019, paper 2. First question, so this question refers to expanding brackets. So again, remembering when expanding brackets you want to multiply numbers with numbers and letters with letters. So the first thing I want to do here is do 4x squared times 3x, which is going to be 12 from 4 times 3, then x squared times x gives me x cubed, plus, and then 4x squared times 5, so 4 times 5 is 20, x squared, which means that the answer is going to be our second option. For question 2, for this one, how many millimeters are there in a kilometer? Well, in 1 kilometer there is 1,000 meters. Then to convert this into centimeters, I need to multiply that by 100, which then gives me 1 with 5 zeros, and then to convert that into millimeters I need to times that by 10, which then leaves me with 6 zeros, so therefore the answer is going to be our third option. For question 3, circle the number that's halfway between 7/12 and 3/4. Well, for this all I need to do on the calculator is simply add the two fractions up and then divide that by 2, and that should give me the answer of 2/3. Now for question 7, it's about recognizing the graph equations. Now this one is what we call a reciprocal graph, and that there is going to be option number 4, because option 1 is a straight line graph, second one is a negative parabola, third one is a cubic, and so learning your graphs, we go from there. Now in terms of work out the lowest common multiple of 120 and 144. Now the lowest common multiple is basically the smallest number that appears in both the 120 times table and the 144 times table. Now for this one, it is obviously they are going to be wanting to see some working out, so you might want to start by doing the 144 times table and the 120 times table. So for this, using your calculator, obviously you can use Venn diagrams, you can use products of their primes, which are your calculator, you can do, that's not a problem. But for this I'm just going to go for the 144, press equals, and then plus 144, and what that will then do is give me the, all I've got to keep doing is just pressing equals. It's going to get rather annoying, and then we've got 432, and then the next one is 576, and we then continue that, and basically what I'm looking for is a number that potentially ends in a 0, because obviously it's going to do, and I end up with 720, and again I'm going to do 112, and then 240, 360, 480, and again eventually I'll get up to 720. Now again, you might find that put to their primes and using that method might be quicker, but as long as you're doing it within 2 minutes, it's absolutely fine. Now if you are going to do this way, make sure that you are showing at least 3 numbers in the times tables, so at least 3, and that will give you the correct answer of 720. Then moving on to question 6. Now question 6 is looking at a scatter diagram. Now if I just zoom out so we can see the scatter diagram in all its entirety. So the first question says, write down the type of correlation shown. That's only worth 1 mark. So for this, I don't need to comment on the strength. However, if I did, I probably won't lose a mark, but that there is a positive correlation. Now if you wanted to write strong, you'd probably get a mark with it. It's not a problem. But anything along the lines of the type of correlation is going to be absolutely fine. Now looking at question B, it says that Liam has a best high jump of 166 centimeters. Use a line of best fit to estimate this best long jump. So for this, what I need to do is I need to draw my line of best fit. And remember that because the axis doesn't start at 0, we've got this sort of axis jump. What we want to try and do is try and get as many coordinates above the line as we've got below. I think that's pretty much okay. Now what you'll find is that there is going to be some form of leeway with regards to this. Now in terms of, if we're looking at the mark scheme, that they're looking for a line of best fit should go between, and using the coordinates of 150, and then the y ordinate needs to be between 504 to 512. So if I just mark where that is, so this is 150, and so 504, which is going to be round about here, and the upper value, which is going to be around 512, which is going to be around about there, and 180, 550 to 558. So 180 is here, and then 550 is just there, and 558 is there. Now, if I just quickly draw some lines, just so that you can see where your line of best fit needs to go, and let's use a different color. Let's get that line back up. So your line of best fit has to go through, it can potentially be touching the red lines I'm going to be drawing now, which can be a little bit fiddly. So your line of best fit has to pass through those red lines that I've drawn, like so. And as you can see, my blue line of best fit does pass through that sort of little tunnel without touching, which even if it did touch, it's not a problem, but that's where we should have. So then from my blue line, I can then read off what I should have. So from 166, so I find where 166 is. So the best high jump, or is it long jump? Let me just double check. It is long jump of 166. So I'm finding where 166 is, which is there. I'm using my line of best fit, which is about there, and so I make it out to be around about 551. And that's the number I'm going to be writing, 551. Now, in terms of this, that should be absolutely fine. Now, in terms of the next one, it says another boy has a best high jump of 195. Give a reason why you should not use a line of best fit to estimate the best long jump. Now, if we look at the best high jump of 195, obviously it then goes beyond where any other points are. So this is what we call extrapolation. Now, anything along the lines of what would quantify full marks on this 1 mark question, so something along the lines of 195 is higher, so 195 exceeds the data set, would be absolutely fine. Other examples we say that goes beyond the data, that 195 is higher than 185, which was the highest tested one. Nobody else has jumped that high. His jump is more than the others. The correlation stops at 560, and there are several other things. Now again, if you want to use the actual word, then using extrapolation would be absolutely fine in terms of that. Moving on to question 7. Now question 7 is looking at speed, time, distance. Now this question says that a car journey is in 2 stages. First stage, the car travels 110 miles in 2 hours, and stage 2, the car travels 44 miles at the same average speed as stage 1. Work out the time for stage 2. So for this, what we need to do first is we need to work out the speed in stage 1. So for this, how do I do that? Well, it's going to be 110 divided by 2, so it's going to be 55 miles per hour. Now from this, what I then need to do is I know what the distance is, I now know what the speed is, and I want to work out what the time is. So time is equal to distance divided by speed. So for this, I need to do 44 divided by 55. And if I do that on my calculator, 44 divided by 55, it gives me an answer of 4/5, so 0.8 hours. Now obviously I want to try and convert this into minutes, so what I need to do then is multiply that by 60, and I get the correct answer of 48 minutes. Now in terms of where the marks would be awarded for this, is that you would probably get 1 mark for getting 55, so that'll be worth 1 mark. 1 mark then for potentially working out 0.8, and 1 mark for your final answer. Now for question 8, this is about comparing coefficients. So what we need to do here, it says here is an identity, and then we've got a bracket 3x minus 10 is identical to 21x plus 2b. So to work this out, we need to work out the values of a and b. Now for this, what we need to do is just expand the left-hand side. So we get 3ax minus 10a, and that is identical to 21x plus 2b. Now, in terms of comparing the coefficients, 3a must be equal to 21. So if 3a equals 21, then a is going to therefore equal 7. Now for b, and let's just use different colour. So here I've got that minus 10a is going to be equal to 2b. So here I've got minus 10a equals 2b. Now a is 7, so that's going to be minus 70 equals 2b. So b therefore is going to equal minus 35. And where I'd get the marks for this particular question is, again, just doing any form of working out. So these would each get you 1 mark and then 1 mark for comparing or showing some evidence on the coefficients. Now for question 9, which looks at bearings, so it says J and K are ships, P is a port, J is due south of P, angle JPK is 56 degrees, and JP is equal to KP, and the question is asking us to work out the bearings of J from K. So what the question is asking us to do is to find this angle here. Now, as you can see that this is an isosceles triangle, so what we can do now, the good thing about bearing questions is that you will get marks if you label the diagram correctly. Now, because it's an isosceles triangle, to work out what this angle here is, all I need to do is 180, take away 56, and divide that by 2. Again, if I get my calculator, 180 minus 56, and then divide that by 2, it gives me an angle of 62. So this here is 62. Now if I extend this line out, what you'll find is that this angle here is also 62, and the reason for that is because it is corresponding. It's like an F angle. Now if that bit here, if I just colour it in, so if this angle here is 62 and this angle here is 180, then the bearing of J from K is going to be 62 plus 180 rather, and that's going to give me an answer of 242 degrees, which is stated there. And moving on to the next question. So question 10 says that the fifth term in a linear sequence is 17, the sixth term is 21, and the question is asking us to work out the 100th term. Now for this, one thing I would suggest that you do is, only because we're dealing with small sort of nth term numbers, so I've got the 5th and the 6th, so that then is 17, that there is 21. Now for this, all I can do, once I've labelled this, and I know what this is the 5th term, that's the 6, 4, 3, 2, 1, this is my value of n. I can see that the sequence is going up in 4s, so that means that the next term is going to be, fourth term is going to be 13, the third term is going to be 9, the second term is going to be 5, and the first term is therefore going to be 1. Now from this I can then work out what the nth term is, so the nth term is going to be equal to 4n minus 3, and then to work out the 100th term, all I've got to do is then substitute n equals 100, so it's going to be 4 times 100, take away 3, which gives me 397. So then we'll move on to question 11. So question 11, it says that the value of a house is 120,000. The value is expected to increase by 5% each year. Write down the expected value after 4 years. Give your answer to 2 sig fig. So this is a compound interest question. So for this, what I need to do is state the original amount, which is 120,000. I'm going to multiply this by the decimal multiplier of increase of 5%, so 100, plus, because I'm increasing, 5% is 105%, and that as a decimal is 1.05, and I do that to the power of how many years, which is 4. So again, I'm going to go straight into my calculator. So 120,000 times 1.05 to the power of 4, press equals, press the SD button, and there it's giving me to 2 sig fig. So the correct answer for this is 145 And let's just get that calculator back up. 860.75. Now to 2 sig fig, the second significant figure is my 10,000. So what I want to then do is look at the number next to it, which is more than 4. So it's going to be 150,000 and then 0.00. Then moving on to question 12. So question 12 says that an isosceles triangle has a base of 16 centimeters and a perpendicular height of 15 centimeters. Some of the triangles are used to make a large triangle. Work out the perimeter of the large triangle. Now for this, what I need to know is I need to work out what this length of the isosceles triangle is. Now for this, what I need to do is recognize that if I halve that, so that's going to be 8 and this is going to be 15, then to work out what this length here is going to be, I'm going to need to use Pythagoras. So to work out this length here, which I'm just going to call L, so L squared is going to be 15 squared plus 8 squared. So L squared is going to be equal to 225 plus 64. So L is going to equal the square root of whatever that is. And so L equals the square root of, is going to be 289. And which if I then type that in, square root of 289, press equals, it gives me 17. So every diagonal is going to be 17. So if I just mark that up on there, and this length here we know is going to be 48. So I've got 17 times 6, and then I'm going to add that to 48. And so typing this all into my calculator, so I've got 17 times 6 equals plus 48. And it gives me an answer of 150. Now again, I could add all of this working out that I've done here, obviously to add it there, but I've just done it just so that it fits on the screen. Now moving on to question 13, it says 200 people recorded the time they spent on social media one day. The table shows the results. So what this question is asking me to do is to find the estimate of the mean time. Now for this, what I need to do, it's giving me the indication that I need to work out the midpoint of these two numbers. Now if you're ever unsure about how to work out the midpoint, just simply add the two boundaries together and divide it by 2. So the first midpoint is 15, then it's going to be 40, then it's going to be 55, and then it's going to be 75. Now with this, what we then need to do is we need to then create our fx column. And how do I create those fx values? Is by multiplying the frequency by the midpoint. Now this question is quite nice because it tells you, it's giving you the columns that you then need to fill in. So here I've got 224 times 15, don't know what I'm talking about there, so let's just type that into my calculator. So 24 times 15 gives me 360. Then for the next value, it's going to be 3040, then 2860, and then 3600. And if I work out the grand total of all of that, it gives me 9860. Now to work out the estimated mean, what I need to do is do the total fx divided by the total frequency. So that's the formula that we use. So for this, it's going to be 9860 divided by 200. And if I type that into my calculator, I should have an answer of 49.3. Now this one's worth 3 marks. You get 1 mark for simply calculating the correct midpoints, 1 mark for correct calculating fx values, and then obviously your third mark will come from dividing those two numbers together. Now in terms of question B, it says draw a histogram to represent the results. So again, for this we need to work out our class width. So that's going to be 30, 20, 10 and 30. And then what I then need to do is work out my frequency density. Now frequency density, again, just as a quick little refresh, is the frequency divided by the class width. So for this it's going to be 30 divided by 24. So 24 divided by 30 rather, and that's going to give me 0.8. I then do 76. So basically what I need to do is just divide these two up. So here I've got 3.8, I'm going to have 5.2, and 1.6. And then what I then need to do is then plot those values into my histogram. Now for this, let's have a look. So we need to go up to 5.2. So one thing that would make your life easier is to probably use one big block representing 1. And this is my frequency density, which is already labeled, so I don't need to worry about that. So looking at the first block, it's going from 0 to 30, and that's going up to 0.8. So that's going to be there. Then from 30 to 50, it's going to be, oh, actually that needs to go there. And then my next one's going up to 3.8, which is there, and that's going up to 50. It's going to be there. And then 5.2, which is there, and so we've got a factor of 10 there. And then the last one, which is 1.6, which is down here, which is there, and to 90 is there. So all I now need to do is just simply join those points up. So 5.2 is there. Now obviously what I'm going to try and do is use a ruler, and I've got 0.8 there, and then we just need to join the lines up. Again, strongly recommend that you do use a ruler. It's a bit fiddly using this. And there is our completed histogram. Now moving on to our next question. So question 14 says Ralph has an iron. He models the base as a triangle joined to a trapezium. It says the iron applies a force of 25 newtons, and to work out the pressure, it's force over the area. Work out the pressure using Ralph's model. So for this, what we need to do is we know what the force is. So F equals 25. So what I need to do is I need to work out the area of these two shapes. Now if I just label this as A and this as B, so area of A is going to be a triangle, and that's 8 times 10 divided by 2, which gives me 40. Now in terms of area B, which is a trapezium, I need to do the two parallel lengths, which is 10 plus 13, multiply that by the height, which is 12, and then divide that by 2. I don't know why I put 1 there, so let's just get rid of that. And if I just quickly type that into my calculator, so up here I've got 23 times 12 divided by 2, and that gives me 138. So the total area is going to be 178. Now for this, to work out the pressure, it's going to be 25 over 178, which then gives me an answer of 0.14. And then obviously in terms of any rounding there, but I've rounded out to 2 decimal places. Now in terms of question 14b, it says, is the actual pressure greater than, equal to, or less than your answer in part A? Now the question here, well, the correct answer is going to be less than, is because he has underestimated the actual area. And the reason for that is because if we look at the iron, the triangle and the trapezium is actually smaller than the actual area. It's a close approximation, but that's the reason why for it. So moving on to question 15, it says rearrange y equals the square root of w to the power of 3 to make w the subject. Now for this, what we need to do is just go through the steps. So here we want to get rid of the square root first, so then that becomes y squared equals y cubed. And then how do we get rid of the cube? Well, we cube root. So it's going to be the cube root of y squared, which is option number 2. Then working out with regards to 16a, it says show that the percentage of B, A% of B is the same as B% of A. Now there are several ways in which we can do this, but the best way of doing this is going pretty much old school. So to work out A%, that's going to be A over 100, and of means times, so that's times B. And this then, B% is going to be B over 100 times A. Now from this, what this then becomes is AB over 100 equals, and that's also going to be AB over 100, so therefore it is the same. Now with regards to 16b, it says that Rosie says 160% of 40 equals 140% of 60 because A% of B equals the B% of A. Is she correct? Well, there's several reasons in which why Rosie is completely and utterly wrong, is because obviously her A's and B values are not the same. So here we can say that if this is A, that is not the same as that A, and obviously in terms of B, they are not correct. Now one way you could do this is actually working out that 160% of 40 equals, and again if I just type that into my calculator, it's going to be 1.6 times 40 is 64, and the equalizer view, and 140% of 60 is 84, and obviously here you can see that these are not the same. Now looking at question 17, it says that a packet contains 80 sweets. The flavour of each sweet is either lemon, orange or apple, and 17a says the probability of lemon or orange is less or equal to 0.85. Work out the minimum possible number of apple sweets. Well, for apple, if it's going to be 85% or less, then the probability here is going to be is 0.15 in terms of apple. Is going to be greater or equal to 0.15. Now for this, all we then need to do, so 15% is going to be the lowest percentage of apple sweets we're going to have. So what you need to do is work out 15% of 80, which gives us our answer of 12. Now for part B, it then says that the probability of lemon or apple is less than 71. There are 71 lemon sweets. Work out the maximum possible number of apple sweets in the packet. Now for this particular question, what we need to do is first of all work out what 71 or 0.17 or 71% of 80 is going to be. So here we've got 0.71 times 80, and that's going to give me an answer of, and let's quickly get the calculator out, so 0.71 times by 80 is going to give me around about 56.8. Now from this, what I then need to do is take that away from, so we're looking at 56 minus 31, which then gives me an answer of 25. So looking at question 18, it says that Kate has the following question for her homework. It says the net of a box is made by cutting 4 squares from a piece of cardboard. The cardboard is a rectangle with a width of x centimeters and length of x plus 5 centimeters. Each square has side length of 10 centimeters. The area of the net is 1000 centimeters squared, and the question is asking us to work out the value of x. So it says show that Kate can form the equation of x squared plus 5x minus 1400 equals 0. Now there are several ways in which we can do this, but I would say the most efficient way is to work out what the total rectangle minus the 4 squares, and that all equals the area of the net. Now if I just colour code this, so the total rectangle, if I just move this down so we've got a bit more space, or maybe not. So the total rectangle is going to be x times the length, which if I just expand the brackets out gives me x squared plus 5x. Now in terms of the 4 squares, well let's do that in different colours so we can just, so the 4 squares is going to be 4 times 100, which is 400. So if I then take away those 2 elements away, so here what I've got is I've got x squared plus 5x minus 400, and that's all equal to 1000 because that's the area of the net. Then obviously if I take the 1000 over to the other side, I get x squared plus 5x minus 1400, and that all equals 0. Now the second part then says for 18b, it says Kate correctly factorised the equation to get, and then x plus 40 and x minus 35 equals 0. The answer in the homework is x equals minus 40 and x equals 35. Is her answer correct? Now for this, obviously, because x is the width of the actual paper, x can't be a negative number. So the answer is no. And the reason for that is because x must be a positive number, as you can't have negative length. So you can't have negative length. So in other words, the correct answer should be x equals 35 only. And again, for 1 mark, you won't get a mark just for ticking the right box. You'd have to give your reason for that. The next question, the question 19, says circle the word that describes the graph of y equals sine x. And again, what this would be our first option, which is periodic. For question 20, it says that 728 is a point on the graph y equals f of x. Circle the point which must be on the graph of f of x, y equals f of x plus 2. Now for this, all we need to do is, for this particular question, is just simply add 2 to the y ordinate. Because obviously if you're adding something to the function, so this topic, if you're not sure, is graph transformations. And what you're doing by adding something to the function, you are affecting the y-axis. So the correct answer is going to be 730. So looking at question 21, it says that n is the middle integer of 3 consecutive positive integers. The 3 integers are multiplied to give a product, and then n is added to the product. Prove that the result is a cube number. Now this is algebraic proof. So for this, what we need to establish is that if n is our middle number, then the next integer is going to be n plus 1, and the previous one is going to be n minus 1. So there are our 3 integers. Now to work out the product, what I need to do is I need to multiply those 3 numbers together. And then what I then need to do is add n. So working out what this is combined, well that's going to be n cubed. Well, let's just write it out. So I've got n minus 1, n plus 1. So this is going to give me n squared take away 1. And because it's the difference of 2 squares. So all in all, this then becomes n cubed minus n. Now if I then add n to that, you can see that the minus n and the other n cancels out, so all I'm left with is n cubed. So therefore the answer is a cube number, and this obviously is going to be my cube number. So in all, it's not actually that bad to prove. All you need to have done is just remember to use algebra and remember that your middle digit needs to be n. Now for question 22, it says here is a sketch of a distance time graph, and the question says which of these represents the average speed between A and B. So is it the grade? So this one is going to be the gradient of the chord from A to B. So it's going to be this third option here. Because obviously what we want to work out, if we want to work out the average speed, we need to work out the gradient of the line that connects A to B. Even though it's a curve, it would be that. Now moving on to question 23, it says here are 3 similar cuboids A, B and C. So we already know that this is going to be related to similar shapes. It says that A has a length of 5 centimeter, width of 2 and a height of 3. B has a length of 10 and C has a length of x centimeters. So the first part saying that the total surface area of A is 62 centimeters squared. Tim wants to work out the total surface area of B. Here is his working, and there is his working. State out 1 criticism for his method. So first things first, we know that the length scale factor is going to be 2. So then the area scale factor is going to be 2 squared, which is equal to 4. So here to work out what the surface area of B is going to be, so here it's going to be that, let's just double check to make sure he's correct. So the surface area of B is going to be 62 times 4, which if I get the calculator out, is 62 times 4 gives me an answer of 248. So we know that he is wrong, and the reason for that is because that the area scale factor equals 4, not 2. So looking at question 23b, it says the volume of A times 125 over 8 is equal to the volume of C. Now to work this question out, and the question is asking us to work out x. So this 125 over 8 is our volume scale factor. So now to find the length scale factor, All I then need to do is do the cube root of that, which gives me 5 over 2. Then to work out x, all I then need to do is multiply that by this length scale factor, and that gives me an answer of 12.5. Now for question 24, it says that here are two inequalities, and we've got inequalities, and we've got x and y are integers. Now the question asks us work out the greatest possible value of y minus x. Now to get the greatest possible value of y minus x, we need y to be its biggest, and we need x to be the smallest that it can be. So we need the biggest y and the smallest x. Now here the smallest x, as you can see from the initial inequality, our top inequality, is going to be minus 2. And for the biggest y, well, in order for y to be its biggest, x needs to be its smallest. So if x was equal minus 2, then our ranges would be 11 to 13. So the biggest y value is going to be 13, and the smallest is going to be minus 2 for x. So here we're going to have 13 minus minus 2, giving us our final answer of 15. Now looking at question 25, this question involves circle theorems, and what we need to do is prove that y equals 3x. Now obviously we've been given the information that CE equals DE, which basically means that the isosceles triangle that's inside the circle is going to be a isosceles triangle. Now using the alternate segment theorem, that this angle here is going to be 4x, and that's from using the alternate segment theorem. Now as this is a isosceles triangle, then this angle here and this angle here are going to be the same. Now to work out what this angle here is going to be, well, that's going to be 180 minus 4x divided by 2. Now if I simplify this, what that then becomes is going to be 90 minus 2x. So if I just label this angle as 90 minus 2x. Now as you can see, I'm doing my working out for each of the parts in the diagram, and which is going to be absolutely fine. And again, I'll write down what each of the steps are as we go along in terms of this. Now obviously this angle here is going to be the same. Why? Because it's an opposite angle. So this angle here is also going to be 90 minus 2x, because it is opposite. Now from this, we can, if I take the triangle of ABC, all of those angles must add up to 180. So here I've got y plus 90 minus x plus 90 minus 2x is going to add up to 180. If I just scroll down a little bit, just to give me a little bit more space, what I'm going to now do is simplify all of this. So I've got what x, or minus x, minus another 2x plus y plus 180 equals 180. Now from this we can see that I'm going to end up with minus 3x plus y equals 0, taking the 180 over to the side, so therefore y equals 3x. Now in terms of my proof and where I'd get the marks is usually a combination of what I've written in the diagram along with what I've written down in the allocated space. Now moving on to question 26, which looks at indirect and direct proportion. So we've got P, Q and R, and we've been given the information, and what I need to do is I need to find the value of R when I know what P is. Now first things first, what we need to do is work with this. So here we know that P is directly proportional to the square of Q, so that's going to be Q squared. So going through this, what I'm trying to do is find the formula. So P is going to be equal to KQ squared. And this is where I substitute these numbers in to find out what the K value is going to be. So if P equals 1.25, Q equals 0.5, and I substitute numbers in, so I've got 1.25 equals K of 0.5 squared. So K equals 1.25 over 0.5 squared, which gives me a K value of, and again, I'm just going to get the calculator out. Just move that over here. So I've got 1.25 divided by 0.5 squared, press equals, and that gives me a K value of 5. So the formula for this is P equals 5Q squared. Now in terms of the second bit of information I've got is that Q is inversely proportional to R. Now again, going through the notions, So I've got Q is equal to K over R, and then substituting in these values here to work out what my second value of R is going to be. So here I've got 0.5 equals K over 6. So K is going to be equal to 3. So looking at this formula here and substituting the K value in, I get that Q is equal to 3 over R. Now what I'm going to do is now use a combination of those two formulas. So I've got P to Q is going to get me is P equals 5Q squared. So using the P value of 0.8, so I've got 0.8 is equal to 5, and then I've got Q squared. So here I'm going to have 0.8 divided by 5 square rooted is going to give me the answer to Q. And so Q is going to equal, that gives me 2/5. And then from that Q value, I'm now going to use this second formula. So here I've got 2/5 equals 3 over R. And again, doing some rearranging, R is going to equal 3 divided by 2/5, which gives me an R value of 15 over 2. Now finally, moving on to our last question, which looks at iterative processes. So for this, I've got xn plus 1 equals the cube root of 3 lots of xn plus 7. And the question is asking, using the starting value of x1 equals 2, work out solution to this particular question to 3 decimal places. So here x1 is going to equal 2. x2 is going to be the cube root of 3. And then if I write this as ands, it's going to be 3 times 2 plus 7. And again, I'm going to write that down and work that out. So here, and let me show you I can use the calculator. And then for x3, it's going to be the cube root of 3 lots of whatever answer this is going to be plus 7. And then x4 is going to be the cube root of 3 and whatever that previous answer was. And then x5, x6, x7, and hopefully from then it should stabilize. So if I get the calculator out, let me just quickly show you how we do that. And where is the calculator? Oh, there it is. So here I'm going to enter the first value, which is 2. So press 2 equals, and then I'm going to enter this formula in. So I've got the cube root, so shift, and the cube root is, find it, there we go. And then it's going to be 3 lots of the answer, which I'm just going to put in brackets. Notice how the cube root roof is still attached, and then plus 7. So then by pressing equals, it should tell me what all of these respective values are going to be. So press equals and it gives me 2.351. So we want it 3 decimal places, so 2.351. So then from this, I then enter that value in. But again, if I've done it on my calculator, I'm just going to be clever and just press equals again. So I've got 2.413. Let's just stick a few dots there. So 2.4, on what the answer was, 13. And what I'm looking for is to where 3 decimal places the number does not change. So here then I'm pressing 2.413 and then pressing equals again. I've got 238, 423, and then after that I'm just going to keep pressing equals. So I've got 2.4, it was 25 if memory serves me correctly, 25 ... and x6 would be 425, and then 7th number again 425 again, so 2.425. and then with the calculator all I'm going to then do is go a bit crazy with the equals, and you can see how the number just stops changing. So the answer to 3 decimal places is going to be 2.426 is going to be, so 2.426 to 3 decimal places. And there is the end of this paper. Now we'll put the grade boundaries to this paper in the description below, so if you are marking it, you just need to total up your scores and you can see what your individual grade on this paper is going to be.